to DEIJB Conversations, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Justice, and Belonging. I love to anchor the DEIJB or DEIJ in the belonging. I feel like that's our niche as our radical oneness that really contextualize the rest of these conversations in our spiritual practices. So this month we are going to be kicking off the season for nonviolence and with a focus on inner violence. And, in our teachings, we, put so much emphasis on, as above, so below, meaning that whatever is happening in the mind of God, or whatever is outpictured is first taking place in the inner terrain of each of our souls and hearts and minds and in the mind of God. So, I feel like this is kind of a somatic, body-based, like let's bring it to our own inner terrain, do our spiritual work first so that we can then address the violence that is happening outwardly and in the world. So with that, and it looks like we lost someone. Maybe she'll pop back in. Let's see. With that, I'm going to share my screen. There we go. You should see the whole slide there. Alrighty. Spiritual practice and inner violence, the season for nonviolence. So if you're not familiar with the season for nonviolence, we'll just start there. It's observed January 30th through April 4th, and it honors the lives and legacies of Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. So it's 64 days dedicated to building cultures of peace. And it happens, through education, through contemplative practices, spiritual practices, in communities as well, rooted in the principles of peace and justice. And the season aligns deeply with the spiritual and ethical commitments of New Thought Ministries. So this is where, we have the opportunity to really embody DEIJB in practice. And it's, so important that we take the time to do that so that, the work, if you are taking this work into activism or if you feel like you're strictly staying in the realm of spiritual practice, it always comes back to, what we're doing in the inner terrain of the soul first and foremost. It's what gives us longevity to do any kind of outer work in the world with people, with systems. So, we're going to just start there. And in this, a new resource from last year that I want to provide for you is the Center for Action and Contemplation, which was founded by Richard Rohr in 1987. So it does use a lot of, here's Judy back in here. It does use, the term Christian a lot, and so I just want to give you that warning in case you have any kind of feelings about that, but to know that it's founded by Richard Rohr, so it's not that kind of Christianity. It's a very open and progressive kind of Christianity that is very unity-friendly. Richard Rohr is, a big friend of unity, if you don't know that. And I pulled this quote. There's an article that is linked here, so you'll be able to get the PowerPoint off of the USCR website, and so the link would be live for you there. But there's an article about violence specifically on this website, on the Center for Action and Contemplation, which is, I think, cac.org. And so I pulled this quote: "The root of violence is the illusion of separation from God, from being itself, from being one with everyone and everything." So the root of violence, it's already an internal job, right? The illusion of separation. When you don't know you are connected and one, you will invariably resort to some form of violence to get the dignity and power you lack. To be clear, it is inconceivable that a true believer would be racist, anti-Semitic, xenophobic, homophobic, or bigoted toward any group or individual, especially toward the poor, which seems to be an acceptable American prejudice. In order to end the cycle of violence, our fight must flow from our authentic identity as love. That's juicy. That's, like there it is. And it's so easy to forget, because when we're doing the work of justice, when we're, out in the world and addressing violence, it's so easy to go fully into the humanity of it and outside the spirituality of it. So I just love this reminder. In order to end the cycle of violence, our fight must flow from our authentic identity as love. What violence, you might be asking? I don't have any inner violence. So before we dismantle outer violence, we got to start with the inner. The war within fuels the war without. Nonviolence is not passive, it is disciplined inner work. So there's your friendly reminder. And I'd love to take just a little pause before we really keep diving into this on a reflection. What does violence look like when it's turned inward? If anyone would like to offer your thoughts about that, or perhaps your experience. Carol.
Well, all of those self-destructive habits like overeating, drinking, drug use, all this lack of self-esteem, things that go on where you hate your own body and all that.
Mm-hmm.
All that's, for me, has been my inner violence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I see heads nodding.
Mm-hmm.
It's a familiar list. What else comes to mind, Karen?
For me, it's the internal critic, always. I don't care what happens, out there. I don't care, where I am. There's always the yeah, but, like always trying to take me back a step, always trying to, you know, uh, something I forgot, something I should have done, something I didn't do, something somebody thinks, look what they think. It's just all this noise around that. And for me, that's where when I act out, when I get out of control, it's often because of my own insecurity that is usually seeded by those attack thoughts. And it's an energy that I come to understand is really trying to keep me safe and protect me and all of that. So there's a partnership that I can actually have with it, but I can never let it run the story. I have to get on top of it, and it's when I don't that I will attack. I'll have sharp words. I'll be bitter, and that's what I notice about myself. And it's a constant struggle. I haven't really found a way to
Right,
always be on
right.
top.
Perceive it. And I appreciate you. It's a constant struggle, but you also named it as a partnership, which puts you in a place of empowerment with it, and it's not
Mhm.
driving the bus. Judy, you had your hand up too.
Yes, I think each of us can probably relate to what I'm going to say, especially right now, is to quiet the inner um, critic when we feel like we should be doing something, or you others are trying to urge us to be out there protesting with them, or maybe all the louder voices out there that are telling us what we should be doing, and then internalizing that, and should I be doing this? Should I be doing more? Maybe I should. And then just remembering to bring it right back in. And what matters more than anything else is my own inner peace and what I ought to be doing. My own purpose is different than another person's. They may be encouraging me to do something, and that's fine for them. And so I think right now we're all straddling this impossible divide that feels like it will not ever, maybe it won't be bridged over. You know, we're seeing that possibility like a tapestry that's just being ripped apart, and whatever it will happen, we have to protect our inner peace.
Beautiful. You know,
Right.
it makes me think when you talk about all those external voices, first thought, of course, is just media, just
Oh,
advertising.
yeah.
But then, kind of tying both you and Karen, what you talked about together, um, spiritual leaders, right, can sometimes be that inner voice of violence, right? Shame and the oppressive voice. And so it's really a sacred um, weight that we carry as ministers
It
to be
is.
sure that we're
Mhm.
showing up and speaking in ways where we don't get internalized as someone else's inner critic. And uh,
Right,
would love to say that in unity, we aren't at that, we don't run that risk. We don't, but we are people too. Our,
right.
ordination doesn't, drain us of our humanity. But yeah, it's really, really important. And Judy Estes, and I'm sorry, we have two Judys, so I'll be more clear
No
when
problem.
I say Judy.
Oh, that's true. Sorry.
No problem. Well, I would just ditto what everybody else said. And this is such a beautifully stated question. What
Mm,
does violence look like when it's turned inward? Um, it's so unity in some ways, and it just, to me, the question makes the point that we have to begin within us and learn tools to stay centered within ourselves and not get triggered by the outside world. And for me, that's a constant everyday
mm,
intention. Um, and it's in today's environment in general, um, it's easy to get triggered, whether you watch TV or not, because some people are on edge all the time. And sometimes I'm on edge. And then I just
Mhm.
have to continue to remember not to join the forces that don't align with the person I'm wanting to be and to continue to stay centered. And I don't know what I don't know. So there are some people that are critical of anybody unlike themselves. Um, and to try my best to I have an education background, so I try my best to imagine those individuals as preschoolers and the innocence they had and what contributes to them being so fearful of anybody that doesn't look like them or act like them and just send them blessings. And I just believe with all my heart that there's a tipping point at which if there are enough people on this earth that live and believe and think peace a majority of the time, or at least half of the time, that there's a tipping point where the love and the goodness and the oneness that we are, the recognition of the oneness that we are all one, that that tipping point's going to occur. And I think in some ways we're seeing that now. People standing up for their neighbors. They're calling them their neighbors, not
Mhm.
those people.
Mhm.
And I love the verbiage of neighbors. These are my neighbors. I'm
mhm.
out here protesting because these are my neighbors. And if enough of us throughout the world practice that, I do believe with all my heart that there's going to be a tipping point and we're going to see more evidence of the good than we currently do. I feel like that wasn't very articulate, but those are
Mhm.
the streaming thoughts I had as everyone was talking.
It's so relatable though. Like, so it's okay to sort of have these streaming thoughts, these downloads because it's such a relatable conversation. So thank you. Thank you for those thoughts. So let's define inner violence, and which we just did, but here's the slide. Inner violence is the emotional, mental, and spiritual harm we inflict on ourselves through internalized oppression, shame, perfectionism, contempt, and disembodiment. Internalized racism, homophobia, etc., is all included in that. So it's the thing your mother or your teacher or your grandparents said to you when you were a kid, and you've been repeating it ever since. That's become inner violence now, and you might trace it back to that person's voice, but you've internalized it and have, brought it into your psyche. Um, and into your ongoing experience. So examples, which you all named very well: self-rejection, I'm not enough; perfectionism as punishment, so love is withheld until you've achieved enough; body betrayal, ignoring fatigue, hunger, illness, all of the addictions that were named as well; internalized supremacy or inferiority narratives; spiritual bypassing, using positivity to silence pain, which we have, is very much alive in our movement and is something that, is worth really addressing and naming. I think we've had a phobia about naming anything negative, anything that's not love and light, because we don't want to affirm it by speaking it. But I think there's power in naming something. That's part of our denials and affirmations. We name the thing and deny its power over us so that we can come to the affirmation. So, I think it's okay to swim in the shadow a bit, enough to be able to name it so that we can know what we're working with, and have that clarity as well that comes from that, from giving something a label. So where does inner violence come from? So let's consider these roots: cultural conditioning, religious trauma, capitalism's productivity demands. Your value is what you can produce in your community. Historical survival strategies, family systems, and Karen, you named it, that often these are thoughts that take place and rooted from the ego, that are designed to protect us, right, and help us survive. But if we don't stay awake, then we can allow those kinds of thoughts to really drive the bus, right, of our experiences. Martin Luther King called the triple evils of racism, militarism, and materialism, that they take root in our psyche. And everything that comes out of that, capitalism comes out of that, patriarchy comes out of that. So, I love that he kind of distilled it to those triple evils, as he called them. I think they are all encompassing of everything on the list up above that line. So we want to look at the somatic connection, and especially because we've kind of just named a lot of this in this space too. I want to give us an experience to kind of, calm, because that might have brought some things up for you. Just really reflecting on what your own inner violence is, might leave you feeling unsettled. And so I want to let's go ahead and have a practice together of also noticing the tone. Karen, you kind of described yours in detail. So let's all just, close your eyes as you're willing and able, or if it's better for you to soften your gaze, even right there. Something when we talk about a meditation practice, not forcing yourself to close your eyes because number one says close your eyes. If that's not comfortable for you, don't do it. Don't do it because I said it. Like really being able to listen. So if it's okay for you to close your eyes, do so. If you want to just soften your gaze or focus your sight somewhere, that's okay too. Think of a recent mistake. And notice the tone of your inner voice about that. What is the story that you tell yourself about it? What is the running narrative, or the should've, would've, could've's? Where do you feel that voice in your body? Or do you have a sensation somewhere in your body as you remember this mistake? Perhaps you did or said something that caused pain to someone else. Maybe you missed a deadline for something. So where do you feel it in your body? And then notice, is your inner voice harsh? Is it cold? Is it urgent? Desperate? Is it gentle? Is it gracious? Just notice. We're not going to judge it. We just want to notice. Would you speak to a child or a loved one in the way that that inner voice is speaking to yourself. And so we'll close this with a slow inhale, hand on the heart, maybe the other hand on your belly as you release the breath. Soften your jaw, drop your shoulders. And as you feel ready, you can open your eyes if you have them closed. How was that? Does anyone want to share, knowing that we are on the recording, so we can always save the conversation for the next session that won't be recorded, or if you feel like there's something you want to share now, I'll just give you a moment to do that. Okay. So the cost of inner
I wanted,
violence. Oh,
I would
go
like
ahead.
to say something.
Yes.
I think that activity or that experience coming after the section on where do we get all of this negative input about ourselves is really powerful, because so often we don't think about that negative self-talk we have today oftentimes originated in our childhood. And
Mm-hmm.
just simply to have that awareness kind of lessens its hold on us.
For sure. For sure. Allowing our adult self into the conversation,
Oh,
right? So
exactly.
much we just let it be between an adult or authority figure and our inner child, but allowing it to be witnessed by our adult self and like, oh, I'm actually bigger than that now.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyone else? Karen?
For me, the exercise was complete here with the hand on the heart and the other hand on the belly, and it began, as always, to take me out of my head and back into my body, and then to love myself as a child, and I mean it was so automatic that
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised by it. And it was like, oh, she's right here. I mean, she's been here all along. Oh, poor Karen, like made a mistake. Oh my goodness, the world will come to an end, and
Mm-hmm.
just really just realizing how bigger I actually am
Mm-hmm.
than my body, than my thoughts, than my head. I mean, it's like there is a much bigger spirit that surrounds me, that I is also me, that can absorb all of this pettiness and remember what is deeply true and what is actually the greater gift in my life, which is the love in me. And I mean, just really being able, I mean, that's just what you taught me just right there.
Mm-hmm.
And begin to embody that realization. I, I don't know where I've been that I haven't done that. So, uh,
Mm-hmm.
where have I been circling around in all this time? I've been identifying the voice. I've been aware of the mechanisms,
Mm-hmm.
but what I could have been doing is embodying this. And so you
Mm-hmm.
gave me another tool. Thank you.
Ah, thank you. Thank you for that acknowledgement and for taking the exercise seriously. Everything we experience is felt in the body, right? We live it, and our feelings that come from our thoughts are experienced in the body. And so I always put the emphasis there so that we can make that connection. And probably especially because I'm more of a head person, my Enneagram 7. So it's a head type, and I can stay in in my head with the best of them and overthink until the cows come home, I guess. So that body work, which my wing of 8 is a body type, but that really helps me get out of my head and can get into that lived and sensed experience that can really allow healing to come in and transformation to come in. So I'm glad that worked for you. And it's a simple, easy thing to take. You can do this on a Sunday. You can do it with your prayer chaplains, in a small group setting, by yourself, with a friend. So yeah, it's simple and repeatable. So the cost of inner violence, which, we've, kind of teased at, but I'd like to really just see it here. It fuels burnout, especially in justice work. It fuels burnout in ministry work. I would add that. In fact, I will add that before I send it in. It creates competition, right? Instead of solidarity, right? We're competing to like get out of the pain that we're in. It makes marginalized folks carry double loads. So, that internalized racism, that internalized, homophobia, transphobia, all of those things, you carry a double load there. And it leads to projection and lateral harm. And it recreates harm patterns in leadership spaces, which is what I touched on earlier with, we, as spiritual leaders, we carry an authority, and people often project the voice of God onto us, or the voice of their parents, or past, pastors or ministers, where they experience religious trauma, and just the weight of something that we say that we think is fun or light, or anything like that can be interpreted in a very different way, if that work isn't being done, if the person is unaware of the inner violence that is taking place, and then it just becomes a projection. So we cannot create belonging externally if we are hostile internally. We cannot create belonging externally if we are hostile internally. If we can't belong in our own skin, in our own beingness, in our own oneness, then we're not going to be able to create that, externally. So the practice of inner nonviolence. So let's flip it now. We've really gotten into what's the inner violence. So what's the practice of inner nonviolence? Compassionate witnessing, which we're doing now, right? We're naming wounds without dramatizing them. We're not, swimming in the pain of it, right? Or the drama of it, but just witnessing it, naming things. And there's something that is sort of, it pulls the power structure out of those wounds, that can feel overwhelming. It can feel like we can wake up to something that, like, has, we might think in the first moment, this has ruined my life, or I've allowed this to ruin my life. It's ruined my relationships, it's ruined my career, those kinds of thoughts. But if we can bring the drama down from it and just name the wound and look at it eye to eye, then we can start to diminish its power, and really then allow our soul the liberation to come forward in its own strength. Interrupting harsh self-talk. Would I say this to someone I love? Would I talk to them this way? I mean, it's just stopping yourself, imagining, precious grandchild, or your own self. Look at a picture of yourself when you were young and say the thing that needs to be said to them, and notice how you shift. Notice how everything softens and grace comes forward, love comes forward and flows so easily, but allow that to just stay right in your own being. Rest as resistance, joy as resistance. Right now, more than ever, we need rest and we need joy. Like, it's okay to, and it's easy to get caught into the trap of, well, there's so much suffering right now. I can't just be happy. I can't, express joy. I can't, be really overcome by wonderful things that are happening. Yes, you can, and ought to. Like, it is good for the heart and soul. It is good for the community. It is good for the world to remember our joy and to embrace it, engage it, express it. Embodied boundaries, again, holding in our bodies, our boundaries emotionally, spiritually, physically, all of it. So that's inner nonviolence. And ritual release. We do it really well once a year with Burning Bowl, write something, but we can do it anytime. And I know many of us have our own just personal practices with this, but write a common inner violence script and tear it up, burn it, throw it away, whatever, bury it, whatever feels right for you, flush it down the toilet, write it on some toilet paper. But these are practices for, flipping that ways that we have habituated inner violence. I think, I kind of agree with Karen that I don't know that it's something we will ever get outside of. I think our egos are hardwired to be a negative Nancy, so to speak, and that's good, like to value that, to make a partnership with that. Like there's good that can come from that, which is awareness. But it's when we fall asleep enough that we let that negativity or fear or anger drive the bus that we really lose our center. So, really making a practice of the inner nonviolence, compassionate witnessing with each other and with yourself. We can really get caught up in our own stories. And so, having a practice of like just imagining whatever story you're saying on the inside and saying it to someone else, and then allowing the voice of love to tell the story can really transform uh, our opinions, our thoughts, our feelings about any given situation or scenario. Anything coming up for you on this inner nonviolence and this list of practices? Judy Estes, you're muted.
Could you tell us a little more about that statement you made? Because I thought it was really juicy. We can get caught up in our own stories, but we also have the option of letting love tell the story.
Yeah, so and I'll just share this because it's not original to me, but there's one of my favorite exercises that I take. I usually do this with during prayer chaplain training. I've done it at women's retreats, and I learned it from Reverend Cheryl Myers in an SEU class I took like I don't know 15 years ago, 16 years ago. Um, and it's where you partner up, and so it's a practice of listening as well as telling. And the partner A gets 30 seconds or so, a minute, to tell of a challenge that they're having in their life. So, is there anyone here that would be willing to actually do this with me? Is there something alive for you that you feel safe in sharing in this space that you would want to do this?
I will.
Okay, Judy. So, you just share with us for about 30 seconds with a challenge that you're having in your life right now.
I have moved permanently to Colorado, and I'm in a home that I've been in for 12 years, and I want to do some remodeling, and I've been interviewing contractors, and throughout that process, I have heard my inner child talking, be careful, don't make a mistake, be careful, don't make a mistake, be careful, don't make a mistake. And I've had to really do a lot of work because I'm using this as a learning process, do a lot of work on letting that go and surrendering and knowing that the steps I'm taking, I'm doing my due diligence.
Okay, thank you. So now you're going to tell us about that again, but you're going to do it from the third person. So you'd say Judy, and then describe again the challenge.
So describe the challenge speaking from the voice or using the word Judy.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, Judy's in the process of interviewing contractors and checking their references and having meetings with them to identify what's all involved in doing the remodeling that she wants to have done. And throughout this process, I've observed that she's having a lot of anxiety that's comes from a fear of not making the right choice.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask you to share it one more time, the same challenge, and now do it from the voice of the Christ of your being, of your highest self, using that voice. Tell
Mm,
us again.
wow. From the voice of my higher self. So it's the voice of my higher self speaking to me or speaking just to the world or just speaking.
Yeah, just telling us the challenge.
Okay. Um, One of my children, Judy, is experiencing fear and anxiety around not making a correct decision in regard to choosing a contractor. I'm wrapped her in love, and I've wrapped her in peace and comfort and ease, inviting her to just rest, and I will take care of everything.
And so then in the partner exercise, we would change, and then I would do the 3 steps again, and Judy would listen. So that's that exercise. So what did you notice, our compassionate witnesses? What did you, well, actually, let's start with Judy. Let's start with you. What did you feel in that experience?
Me?
Judy Estes.
E-
What was that
Oh,
like for
okay.
you?
A lightning, and I almost wanted to start laughing because, of course, I have no control ultimately, and I don't know each of these individual people's lives and what they're bringing to this. And but my higher power does, and it's going to make the appropriate match, and there's no way I can do anything wrong.
So it lightened your load in this
Yeah,
process, in this
yeah, I
experience.
would say it lightened my load. It'd be a good,
Yeah.
simple way to summarize that.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, it's just a reminder that, I've always got a partner in life. I just need to always open up to that partnership
Mhm.
and remember that it's there even for the most simple day-to-day experiences.
How did it feel in your body moving through the 3 different
Okay, this is the one
feelings?
that's more difficult for me. And I have to be honest, other than feeling lighter, that was just an all body general feeling. That's an area I really am working on. I think I spent so much of my childhood and young adulthood dissociating from my body in order to be safe or to feel safe
Mhm.
that that I don't find that to be easy.
It's such a common experience for women, especially, to learn how to dissociate, really. And being that we are female heavy in our movement, I think it's so important for us to talk about, to name, to really focus on that somatic experience as part of our collective healing, as part of our individual healing. And so I appreciate you naming that, and not as a failing on your part, or, oh, Judy's got more work to do. It's none of that. But it's like even just being able to say, oh, I feel lighter, but I'm maybe limited in accessing what it felt like in my body. Like even just being able to talk about that releases the inner violence about that experience,
Mm-hmm.
and which opens then, of course, us to noticing more and finding safety in what we experience physically. Um, what else did, I'll open it now to everyone. What did you notice? And thank you, Judy, for jumping
Mm-hmm.
in and doing that
Sure.
without knowing where we were going with it. I appreciate that. So I appreciate that. So what did you all notice in listening to the 3 different tellings? Judy,
Um, I did notice that there was so much compassion coming through, especially in the third dialogue, and I loved that. And the feeling that was coming through was compassion and love, and encouraging her to not be fearful, and holding little Judy in the arms of love and compassion. That was a powerful experience. Thank you for suggesting that.
Mhm.
but she immediately said, as my child, one of my
Yeah,
children. I mean, how intimate.
uh-huh,
Mhm.
Immediately went to
yeah,
intimacy in that third voice. Judy is one of my
mm-hmm,
children, like
mm-hmm,
claimed by the divine presence. I mean, that was
mm-hmm,
powerful for me to
mm-hmm.
witness. What else did you guys notice? Carol?
Well, I thought too, even the second part where you just step back and describe yourself in the third person, that puts such a different spin on it. And I felt that lightning at that point too, that, oh, it helps kind of identify for yourself what's going on. Oh, look at, there she goes again, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you get a fresh perspective that you don't
Mm-hmm.
you have access to it at all times, but we don't
Yeah.
often go there. I know the first time, part of why this was so powerful to me is the first time I did this exercise, I told on myself in the third person. I was like, well, Jackie says this, but I think what's really going on is this. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, shut up. Like, this is my own voice coming out. But I just said the thing that I knew, but was not allowing myself access to that thought or that wisdom or that realization, And then when it came to the Christ self speaking, there were very few, for me in that scenario, there were very few words. What I noticed for Judy is you had more comforting and encouraging words, and that, almost like,
Mm-hmm.
that that parent, teaching the child like
Mm-hmm.
it's okay, like we're gonna do this, I've got you, So it can go different ways for that. What else, Karen? Did you notice anything?
Just the partnership that Judy mentioned, as she reframe, kind of integrated what she had just experienced, and in that, I really heard the partner, the partner that has been in waiting, to be called in, like you've called me in now. Let me envelop you in reassurance and also the wisdom. And you're right, we're in this together, and it's going to be an adventure. You're going to be okay. You can't make a mistake, just like you echoed. It was like, yeah, it was like witnessing that, and then hearing the realization that Judy herself had. So thank you, Judy. That was lovely to be on the inside with you.
Beautiful, thank you. So take that, it's a very powerful exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And it can take people deep, and yet it's simple. It has, a framework, so it's, just 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, so
Mm-hmm.
people don't get into the big long story of it. And so it can be really powerful and effective way to help people move into that realization that that wisdom, capital W wisdom, is right there. It's right there. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, King and Gandhi. Gandhi called nonviolence soul force. King spoke of beloved community. We know these concepts. What if beloved community begins with beloved interiority? Beloved interiority. What if you are part of the community in your felt experience first, so that you're bringing your whole self in, and already as experiencing your love, so that when you come into community and beloved community, you're able to really just open that out and share it out. So inner nonviolence strengthens outer courage. Self-compassion fuels sustainable justice work and ministry work. Healing shame reduces the need to dominate. Right? We're not clamoring to get on top of and get, to reclaim our power in a sort of a sideways motion, but we're actually doing it from a healed place to where we're coming into divine authority. So this, I love tying it back to King and Gandhi and what they have represented in the world, and and for justice work specifically. And I always love to say it's Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., is, if you don't have Strength to Love on your bookshelf, I highly encourage you to get that. It's, you know, several of his writings, and they're just so powerful. It's really like you get to really see his pastoral heart, and lots of just inner story, personal stories of his experiences, and it's powerful, powerful work. All right, so why Season for Nonviolence matters in unity. It aligns with spiritual principles of oneness, love, and consciousness, calls for active commitment to justice and accountability, something that we, have shied away from in the past. I think in general, we are doing a pretty good job of not doing that anymore. I think somewhat we've been forced into the conversation, as a movement. I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable with that, and I'm glad to see that many of our colleagues are gaining comfort um, in that as well, which is really all about getting comfortable being uncomfortable, right? So it's relevant in today's polarized political climate, which, I think Judy described the tapestry. Like it just feels like the chasm and the divide is getting wider and wider. But we know that that's not true in consciousness and in spirit. So we've got to, be the lighthouse for that. Bridges spirituality with social responsibility. So if there's a question of what is ours to do as spiritual beings, here's the bridge. And it's as above, so below, right? Which is about taking what's inside and bringing it out into the world. So are we doing that work on our inner violence, or should I say practicing inner nonviolence? And this all comes down to Unity's fifth principle, right? Living the truth we know, finding ways to express that in the world. And I always love to give us practical steps in ministries. And, I think there are probably ways you can do this in the grand experience of retirement. Not to call anyone out, but education and awareness, right? That never stops. Host book studies and workshops. Have conversations. Put yourself in places where it might not be comfortable. Maybe you're not representing the majority of the people in the room, and so you're allowing your own space to learn. Community engagement. Partner with justice organizations as a ministry or as an individual. Spiritual practices, meditations, and nonviolence commitments, like name it. Call to action, encourage daily acts of nonviolence, and somatic practices, which I think is so important for us. We get there often through our meditation, but sometimes we just leave it there. And there's so many other ways that we can connect to the body so that we're really bringing our whole self, our body temple into every conversation. Name the inner violence and encourage the inner work of cultivating inner nonviolence. And a list of resources for you to take, of course, the Unity Statement of Social Action position, AG&T, which the website, I'm not sure if it's up anymore. Actually, I need to check on that. But they had a whole host of resources for Season for Nonviolence at one point. The International Peace Museum, and then I've added the Center for Action and Contemplation. So those links are live on the PowerPoint. And that concludes this session. And so I'll just remind you that our fourth Thursday, which will be February 26th, is a reflection session. We don't record that session. If you're watching this by recording, not here with us today, that's okay. You can join us on the fourth Thursday, or bring a friend, a colleague, and it's okay if they missed all of this. I think they will also be able to participate in the conversation. So the homework, which I always love to assign just to give you something to think about, even if you don't do it, just planting the seed there, I think sometimes can make a difference. This is for journaling. When did you first learn to be hard on yourself? Whose voices live, or whose voice lives in your inner critic? Like who's in your head? What would inner solidarity feel like? What would inner solidarity feel like? Those are some good journaling questions. So I hope you make time to sit with those questions and jot down your responses, draw a picture as a response. It could be, take a walk and see where it takes you as you're thinking about these questions. The homework, of course, is never graded. And if you don't do it, that's okay. Bring your thoughts to the next session. But let's do some work, and then also utilize resources from AG&T, from the International Peace Museum, or from the Center for Action and Contemplation, or discover your own and bring it back and share with the group on the next one. In March, we will do Pride again, refresh with folks with faith. I always like to do that in advance of June, so it gives people tools and time to get ready for a really good Pride month in their ministry. So I'm complete with the presentation, and I'm going to go ahead and end the recording, but we can have some more conversation here. We've got about 10 minutes left.